All right, welcome to another episode of Real Talk with a Vulnerable Angel and Friends. I am your host, the Vulnerable Angel, Dominica May. And tonight I am joined by my friend Mike. Just Mike tonight. As it happens, some people are sometimes unavailable to join. So, it's just going to be the two of us tonight.
I think for tonight, the name of the episode should be Real Talk with a Vulnerable Angel and Friend.
Friend, yeah. Makes me sound more lonely, though.
Fair.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with this show, if you've never tuned in before, what we do is we just have deep and vulnerable personal conversations with each other, asking each other.
I eat things.
Sometimes. And yeah, we have some question cards that we use for inspiration. We also love to have audience comments and questions that help drive the conversation forward as well. So feel free to drop us any comments or questions in the chat. If you're watching after the fact, feel free to drop us some questions in the comment section of the YouTube, and we can always bring them up in a future stream. So yeah. Let's get started. I have a question to start us off with. It's not for one of my question cards. And I'm not going to say like what inspired this question, but I have, obviously we talk about a lot of our personal lives through this kind of thing. And, I saw, and this isn't what inspired the question, but I did see a local friend of mine shared a quote from a writer about, something to the effect of, if you don't want to be written about horribly by a writer, then don't, behave better, or something to that effect. And so I was wondering, how do you feel about, obviously we'll feel comfortable talking about other people in our lives, whether or not we have permission from them. We use pseudonyms if we're not sure if it's okay, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think that there are people who do not feel comfortable with being talked about in that kind of fashion. Do you have
with pseudonyms?
Yeah, even with pseudonyms.
Okay.
Do you have any kinds of thoughts or reactions to that kind of thing? Have you ever felt like somebody has talked about you in a context that you've not been comfortable with? I think we've kind of talked about gossiping in the past, and we're like, that's fine. But have you encountered any kind of situations where it's been awkward for you, or where maybe you've shared something that somebody else has gotten upset with you about it? It's a very long-winded question.
Well, I've a few thoughts popping in mind. When I first started getting into comedy, like really getting into comedy, I was cast in a show in Times Square. It was a terrible show, but it was every Friday night, 9 p.m. prime time slot at an actual comedy club in Times Square. And I was brand new. I'd never taken any classes. I was very full of myself because I thought, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. And I just got cast in a show in Times Square. Right? I had no training. Mm-hmm. I just went along with whatever was happening. And I thought, like, wow, I've got a gift. But I've always been very sensitive to group dynamics and how I'm perceived in those group dynamics. And there was a clique within our group, and I wasn't a part of that clique. And I remember one day, it was myself and two other people from the team. We all got together for lunch or whatever. And one of them was talking about the technical skill of one of the other people in the group. And, as those conversations always happen, people, Some people get praised and say, wow, they have so much raw natural talent, like they're going to go far. And then other people were spoken about as like, I don't know how they got on this team.
Yeah.
So I spoke up and I said, I'm asking you in full sincerity. I genuinely want to know. We're sitting around here talking about other people. What do people say about me? I want to know. And it didn't come from a place of, ooh, I want the inside scoop to see what people are saying about me. Meh. It came from a place of, I want to know how I'm perceived so that I can change that perception if it needs to be changed. I want to know what people think of me as a performer so that I can work on the skills that I need to work on. But of course, I was so young and ignorant and whatever. Like, it just came across as like, oh, so what do people think about me?
Yeah.
And of course, their response was like, no, I'm not playing this game. Nope, I am not. I am not doing that. Which told me a couple of things. One, they're mature enough to not they're mature enough to know not to ask that question or to be engaged in that question. But it told me a second thing. People are talking about me.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was a pill that I had to swallow. It was a pill of my own creation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Talking about people in any capacity is what we do. We're human beings. We talk about people. Whether it's good or bad, we talk about each other. I talk about myself. Yeah, I've bragged to high heaven about my wife on this show so much. And everything that I said is positive. I haven't said a single negative thing about anyone in my personal life. The use of pseudonyms, I think, is totally fair game, because if let me go back to this well. All right, so we have Iron Man and we have Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah.
So Iron Man and Wonder Woman are hanging out, and Iron Man sees a bad guy, and he shoots his laser blast or whatever at the bad guy. He misses, and he hits a pedestrian instead, right? Wonder Woman was there for that whole thing. And so while that was a thing that Iron Man did, well, that is a thing, a potential mistake that he made, there was also Wonder Woman's experience.
Mm-hmm.
She was there. She was there for that, right? She may not have caused it. She may not have partaken in the activity of accidentally harming a pedestrian, but that was part of her experience as well. So from Wonder Woman's perspective, I feel like she's allowed to talk about that experience because that was her experience. Now, she might care about Iron Man and she might want to conceal his identity and say, oh, it was actually Batman.
Yeah.
Right? Or it was a superhero you've never heard of before. His name is the Cashew. Yeah, Cashew. It was all Cashew, right? So yeah, I think where it starts to get sticky and messy is if Iron Man walks up to Pam Beasley from The Office and says, "Oh, Pam, check this out," blah 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 blah, and which is totally fine because Wonder Woman is there. She gets to share this experience with whomever she wants. But then when Pam is hanging out with Alf, Pam goes, "You're never going to believe what Iron Man did." I feel like that's where the betrayal of trust comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not Pam's story to tell. That's Wonder
Mm.
Woman's story to tell. So I feel like that's kind of, I feel like gossip, it also depends on what the offense is, you know? Why are you telling this story? Um, was that an incident that Iron Man and Wonder Woman had together, and Iron Man feels so terrible, so embarrassed about it, and he goes, I really fucked up. I would really appreciate it if you didn't tell anyone about this. Well, then, that's a private thing. But if that's never said, if that's never spoken, I don't know. Like every situation is different. It's
Mhm.
hard to. I don't think that there is a blanket statement to cover everything. I don't, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree that there's not a blanket statement to kind of know what is okay. I've had, obviously, we've talked about the fact that I've written a memoir. I've written about a lot of different people of my life in there. And some of them I have asked, before, making a decision about what to write, whether they were comfortable with me writing about them in there. And I did have somebody say, please do not write anything about me in there. And I'm like, it's going to be hard to, okay, but I'll do my best to avoid writing about you in it. But at the same time, there are times where, at least, one or two small incidents impacted the story. And it's like, well, this is, it's still like, there are times where I'm just like, I don't feel like I can tell this full story without telling this part of it. And sometimes you kind of have to decide, well, how important is my relationship with this person versus the narrative that I'm trying to tell.
Yeah.
And that might mean that sometimes you will hurt somebody's feelings because of what you write. But if, for me, honesty is the point, like that has been what I've been pushing towards more and more throughout my life. And if I feel like I have to, because it kind of gets to a point of like, if I'm not able to share my full story, that I start walking on eggshells because I'm more concerned about how another person is going to react to what I have to say, because I don't know how they're going to take it, right? So that's kind of where so I think where I'm at now is, because I'm very open about this is who I am and I share my stories. And it's like, if you are not comfortable with me writing about you in a particular way, and I try to be really nuanced, right? When I write about someone, like saying positive and negative things, because that makes somebody more well-rounded. But some people might still be hurt by that. So I feel like I'm more, if somebody is not going to be comfortable with the possibility that they might say or do something that impacts me, that causes me to want to write about it, they probably shouldn't be in my life. And I feel like that's a very fair way of dealing with things.
There's a whole cause and effect thing, right? What's the Albert Einstein law of relativity? Every action has an equal or opposite reaction. Sometimes that reaction is positive, sometimes that reaction is negative, right? In comedy, we experience this all the time, especially like after it was really heightened, right around and just after the Me Too movement, where you have some comedians who say, um, uh, well, I can't say anything anymore. You can't say anything. You can't joke about anything anymore. And the opposite is actually true. You can. You can say anything. This has always been true. You can say anything you want. You go right ahead. But who's your audience? You know, if you tell, classic basic example, if you are a comedian who wants to tell racist jokes, um, I'm not going to say that they're not funny. I don't find them funny. I don't feel like most of this viewing audience would find them funny. But objectively, they are funny because when you tell a racist joke to a racist, guess what? They laugh, right?
Yeah.
So objectively, that joke is funny. So, find your audience. Know who's going to respond to it. But also, if you decide to look past the whole find your audience prelude, just because you feel defensive about your freedom of speech doesn't mean that somebody else is not allowed to be upset with you for it.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to be upset with you for telling a racist joke. That's my freedom. That is my prerogative, and I'm allowed to have that. I don't feel like it would be, well, I'll save that part for myself. But I yeah, it's some things you don't want to be on record saying.
No, that's fair. I get it.
But no, I feel like you can't control how other people are going to react, but you also have to understand how people are going to react. Um, what kind of an emotion are you looking to elicit? Are you looking for self-gain? Are you looking for self-praise? Are you looking to maintain relationships? Like every audience is different, every situation is different. So you can't just dig your feet in the sand and say, I'm allowed to do this. So meh.
You can if you want to.
I mean, you can.
I do, but
Yeah.
I feel like I do, but in context. Like, it does really depend. But I'm also like, I'm okay with being seen as the bad guy in somebody else's story. If they don't like what I'm saying about them or other situations and stuff, I could be the bad guy in that person's story.
That's a really hard thing to admit.
I'm the bad guy in my ex-husband's story. I'm fine with that. I've written countless, I've talked about him in countless ways that has not been flattering towards him. But it's my right. I can talk about that. And, obviously not everyone is comfortable with being seen as a bad guy. It's a real ego hit, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm at a point in my life now, I feel like I've talked about this before, that I'm just like, if it helps you to see me as a bad guy that is doing something that you don't like, fine. I don't want to sacrifice some part of myself to appease somebody else's feelings. Like sometimes it comes from a place where they are, they get defensive or they get hurt, but they're not owning what actually has triggered them into feeling that way. They put the blame on you, but you may not actually be the one to blame there. So yeah, I'm just at the point now where I'm just like, blame me all you want. I'm not going to see it the same way. And unless you're willing to have a conversation so that we can both see each other's perspectives, it's not worth my time.
And that's a really hard thing to do. It's a really hard thing to own that. And to say, you know what? If you want to vilify me, okay. So few people, and myself included, are okay with being viewed as the villain, as the bad guy.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. Well, nobody wants that, but
no.
Some people are okay with it.
Yeah, I don't like being seen as a bad guy, but I will take that on if that's what is necessary to a situation. If that's what I need in order to stay true to myself and my needs, then I will, be somebody else's villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next question.
I do actually have another question.
Is anyone watching it? Is anyone
No, not at the
writing in?
moment. No,
Okay,
not
well,
at the moment.
night's
Just
early.
the two of us still. I didn't promote it very well this time, so we'll see what happens.
Daniel checks in. He's usually pretty good about it.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. So my next question is, we've both talked about how we've had a parent who has passed away. So this past week, this Tuesday, was my mum's would have been my mum's 70th birthday, but
nice.
she passed away 20 years ago. So that's now 20 years that she has not lived, and I'm like, 70 still sounds so young, and that
especially in today's world,
right. And that round number of it, 70, it's a decade number. It's got a 0 on the end of it. It really hit me really, really hard. Have you found, I don't remember how long ago that you said that your father passed away. Okay. Have there been like any anniversaries that have kind of hit you hard or harder than others?
getting married. I really wanted my dad there for my wedding. Anniversaries, celebrations, milestones, not really. Other than getting married. It comes and goes. I've told the story before. The night my dad died, we came home from the hospital and everyone went to bed. This was like 3 o'clock in the morning. Everyone went to bed and I curled up in a ball on the bed and I cried, probably the hardest I've ever cried in my life, like for 15 minutes straight. It was, for anyone who has cried that intensely, 60 seconds is a long fucking time. So to go for 15 minutes straight and just blubber and snot and mucus and saliva and tears, everything is coming out of me. Except for urine. I held that pretty well. But I think for me, that catharsis was, yeah, sure, of course, yeah, it was necessary. We all know that. But it had an interesting effect on me that I let it all out, all of it, like years and years and years worth of future grief. I got it all out in that 15 minutes. And of course, at the funeral was really emotional. Of course, I cried during the funeral, but not that grief-stricken 15 minutes that I had the night he died. So all of that is to say, there's some days that anything and nothing can trigger it. A few weeks ago, I think it was, it was as recent as a few weeks ago. What was I watching? Here, you know what? Let me play it for you. I came across an old voicemail that I found from my dad. Here, let me play it for you right now. Yeah, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, Mike, it's Dad. It's about 12:30 Wednesday afternoon. I just thought I'd give you a buzz and see how you're doing. I was thinking of you. And I'll let you go. I love you. Bye.
That was it. I was just going through my phone and I found that voicemail. And I'm like, what is, because I don't have my dad's number stored in my phone anymore. So it's just like this random number with no name attached to it. I'm like, what is this? So I clicked on it and I totally had forgotten. And it didn't just ruin my day. Well, ruin. It put me in such an introspective mood. all day, and it lasted for like 3 days. And it was mopey. I don't believe I cried, but it was just, I just really fucking miss my dad. And yeah, they used to happen more often. But as time goes on, other things take over your life, and you focus on this and focus on that, and so it happens less often, but it still happens, and it just, I don't know. Most days I'm fine with it. It's just, it is what it is. He's dead. His body is decomposing somewhere in the ground in Virginia.
My mum was cremated, so she's in a box somewhere.
That's
As
how
ashes.
I want to go. How about you? Like, what was the 20 years later? You said today?
Tuesday, so 2 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 days ago was your mom's 70th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
What were the thoughts and feelings running through your mind, and like, how often does that kind of stuff pop up for you?
Yeah, not as often as it used to. So, but I was thinking about it before her birthday. Like, I got together with one of my ex-husband's exes on Sunday because I was feeling really rageful about other stuff, and I'm like, I need to be in somebody's presence who gets what I'm going through right now. and while we were chatting, I just brought up randomly, it was that my mom's 70th birthday was coming up, and that was kind of like, and she was like, oh, let me know if you want my company on the day. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure I'll be fine. Every anniversary of her death and her birthday is different. Like, some days the day will pass and I'll completely forget that it was that date. And then other years it's like, oh, it varies how I decide to kind of mark that day. But 70 felt significant. 20 years gone feels significant. That's a really long time to not be living with her. And my life would be so different if she had not passed away at 50. I ended up writing and publishing a blog post about the things that I was reflecting on that morning. And a lot of it was about, seeing how I kind of followed in my mum's footsteps with different things unintentionally. So, for example, mum was a teenager where both of her parents passed away. And so she met my dad at university, and after he graduated, he got a job in Australia, and she was 19, and it was like the first chance she got to escape her grief from her parents dying. She escaped with him to Australia, like flew out to Australia to be with him and get married. And I brought this up to my therapist yesterday as well. And I was like, I realized that I did exactly the same thing. As soon as, just after, because I met my ex-husband a week after her funeral, and I married him less than a year later, and then we moved to Malaysia shortly after that, a couple of years after that. So it's like, man, I did the same thing that she did. And
a long time then.
Hmm?
You were married for a long time then.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how long you were married for.
It was
like 6 or 7 years.
13 years, 7 months, I think, was what was recorded at the time of separation. By the time we were divorced, it was over 14 years, but obviously you don't count the ones when you're separated. But it was over 13 years that we were married for before separation. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm just like, I probably wouldn't have kids. I don't think I would have gotten married when I did. I think my mum would have talked me out of it. Or I would have been smarter. Because I avoided grieving her death, I, latched onto the first man who was interested in me. And I'm like grieving my mum without grieving her. And I was 21 and not, I was still living with my mum at the time when she passed away. So I didn't know how to be an adult. I'm like, I just need somebody else to take care of me. Kind of. And I probably could have taken care of myself and figured things out on my own at 21. I was left with a decent enough inheritance to be able to survive off that for a while until I, kind of figured things out. But that was it was too much for me. So I did the same thing as my mom. Married the first person that came along afterwards. And yeah.
Well, this brings up an interesting question. If your mom was still alive today, so your mom died from cancer?
Yeah, she had pancreatic cancer.
Let's just say that she did the chemo, everything turned out just fine. Sliding doors scenario. She kicked the cancer, never had any more complications from it, and she went on to continue living. And let's say that hypothetically, in another 25 years from now, 95, the ripe old age of 95, that's when she kicks the bucket. What do you think your life would look like right now had your mom not died 20 years ago?
God, I have no idea. Genuinely, I can't even comprehend at all, because there's so much that in my life that I love now that would never have happened if she hadn't passed away. Like, if I never married my ex-husband, I never would have had the kids that I have, and my kids are amazing.
Yeah.
If I never married my ex-husband, I never would have moved to Malaysia and met all the amazing friends that I have there.
Yeah.
I'd probably still be stuck in Australia. Who knows what I'd be doing, but probably living a more boring life than what I'm currently living.
Where did you go to school?
In a town called Rockingham in Western Australia.
I thought you studied in the U.S. for college.
Oh, no. My university was in Rockingham, and then also when I went back to school, after I did a 7-month around the world trip after I graduated from my undergraduate degree, I went back to the same university but a different campus in a city town suburb called Murdoch. So I went to Murdoch University in Murdoch. And that's where I studied my filmmaking stuff, did a graduate diploma in media production.
After your parents split, did your mom enjoy her life?
I think she did still have a pretty rewarding life. She did not date anyone afterwards. This is another thing that I kind of wrote about briefly in my blog post. She didn't date anyone afterwards because, my parents, they separated, were legally separated, but they never got divorced because they were Catholic, and they're, divorce is against the Catholic religion. So she never, as far as I know, she never dated anyone else. She just had really rewarding friendships. She had a really rewarding job. I think she had a pretty fulfilling life. When she was sick with the cancer, I have a very distinct memory of a conversation that I had with her. I asked her, knowing that she's dying, I'm I know there's no way. It's more of a case of when, not if, right? Yeah. So I was I was curious, what was she most sad that she was going to miss out on by dying this young? And I was thinking, what places that could you have traveled to that you never got to travel to that you would have liked to see, like that kind of like that, because I'd just traveled around the world for 7 months, so I was like, travel was on my mind, right? We had just spent like a week or so in New Zealand at the very tail end of my trip, and we'd never been to New Zealand before, like outside of the airport or whatever. So like that was a really cool thing. And her answer was the only thing that she was sad that she was going to miss out on was not getting to meet her grandchildren. That was the only thing. So I mean, that tells me that she led a very rewarding life. If that was the only thing that she was sad that she was going to miss.
Yeah. You know what's really superficial is that I think about that same question all the time. And this is so stupid, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think about that same question for myself. What would I miss out on? And then I think about all the movies that are coming out here. Like, oh, I'm not going to be able to see James Gunn's Superman? How terrible would that be? I'm going to be in heaven or in the afterlife, whatever. I'm going to be in the afterlife. Am I still going to be able to see it? Like, are we going to be able to hang out in movie theaters and like watch whatever we want? Or are we going to be in a different plane of existence? That's the shit I think about.
Yeah, I don't think that's a question that I ask myself, but a similar question that I wonder about is like, who is going to care when I die? Who is going to care and be upset when I pass away, right? I saw some news about someone who in my kind of community of people, one of my communities passed away this past week, and some of the people who reacted to it were like, yeah, but he was problematic and things, and I'm just like, so
the same person that you and I know that just recently passed away.
Yes, you are aware of this person. And I don't know like really any of that context of that stuff, but it's more of a question of, yeah, I do wonder, like, especially I wonder more, like, obviously there are people in my life who I know would absolutely be upset if I died, but I'm more curious about, are there people who have lost touch with me but like miss me, who would be upset if I passed away? because they would never have the chance to reconcile with me ever again, right?
No.
Because I have that kind of thought sometimes of like, who are the people who I am no longer in contact with that, I like, how would I react if I learned that they'd passed away and there was no chance of getting in touch with them again, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's the whole crux of why we constantly say to each other, like, treat each other with kindness. My grandmother had a saying, there was something to the effect of like, don't go to bed without doing the dishes and without saying I'm sorry. Every night. Don't go to bed unless you've done those two things. And I think there's a lot to that, in that, do the dishes before you go to bed. In other words, take care of your shit. Make sure your house, whatever that proverbial house is, make sure your house is in order, and then make amends. We offend people every single day, every day, and we don't even know it. So try to be aware of it and do what you can to not do that in the future. But then if you have, like, try to make an effort to make it right.
Yeah.
So, next question.
No, sorry. I'm like, my lips are chapped right now. Where did my chapstick go?
If I had mine, I would pass it directly through the camera.
Yeah. So, like it was in my pocket, and now it's not. I know. I don't know what happened to it, mate.
You smell an floor set.
No, I feel like there was something else I was going to say into that. But before that, I want to go back to something you said at the very, very beginning of the stream. You were talking about a clique in that group.
Yes.
And every time I hear Americans say clique, I'm like, that does not sound right, because I pronounce it clique.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just like,
it looks like it should be pronounced clique, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe it is in Australia. I think it is in Australia. Now I want to
It's
know.
like it's the difference between aluminum and aluminium.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't get myself to say aluminium on a regular in my vernacular, but I believe that would be the correct pronunciation if you look at how the word is spelled.
It's spelled differently in the US than it is in the rest of the world.
Is it?
Yeah, it doesn't have an I where we would pronounce aluminium. So in the US, it's spelled aluminum.
Huh.
Yeah.
I never noticed that.
Yeah.
The point still stands. Even
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
God, I'm upset that I can't find my. How is it missing? Like, how is it not in my pocket? Where did it go? Did it fall out of my pocket? That's nuts. Anyway.
60-second break to go look for it.
No, because I wouldn't even know where to look now at this point. Beyond this, because it should be it should have been in my pocket. Anyway, this is such entertainment.
Can't let it go.
Such entertainment. No, I still have more stuff that I can talk to about with so. One of the things on my mum's birthday, I'm like, I didn't want to, really talk to anyone. I was not really on social media at all that day. And I went out to see, are you familiar or have you seen the trailer for Last Breath?
I am not.
It's a true story. I went to see it because I'm a fan of Simu Liu. And he's in it. And I'm like, this is the second true story that you've been in that I've been to see you in the movies. But it's about these deep sea divers who...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
With Woody Harrelson. Yeah.
Yes, with Woody Harrelson.
I forgot that was the name of the film.
Yeah. And so, really intense. And we talked about it with my therapist. I'm like, I don't know if that was the best call of film for me to see on my mum's birthday when I'm like worried about her death, and it's like this true story about somebody who
took their last breath.
Yeah. I don't know, like I don't want to give spoilers, but it's also a true story, so you can easily look up what happened.
I'm probably not going to watch the movie, so I don't care. And for anyone else, just mute.
Yes, just mute for a bit. So what happens is this guy who's one of the deep sea divers, his like umbilical cable gets torn off, and he gets like he stays under the water and has like 10 minutes of oxygen left.
And that's
while
the Simu Liu character.
No, he's not the person. he's another one of the divers, and so then the ship gets the ship is in a storm, so it gets carried away, and then this guy who is left there, like Simu Liu's character, is like, get yourself to the top of this structure so that I can come back and save you. And, you know, and so that guy, he manages to do that within the 10 minutes of oxygen that he has left somehow. But then he is out without oxygen for 29 minutes before he is finally rescued and brought back into the it's called a bell, the thing that they have like underneath the and somehow miraculously survived. And they still, that science has no explanation for it. They said maybe due to the pressure and the temperature of where he was. That is the only possibility that they can kind of, or like the only theory that they could kind of come up with. It was like written at the end of the film. But it's just like, oh man, like it. I wish my mom had some kind of miraculous savior kind of situation for then. You know, if there was a while after my mom passed away, like within the same year that she passed away, I think, I had several dreams about her, like, being still alive, and then, you know, us not realizing that she was still alive. Then she came back and having to deal with how do you deal with that? Because like already, like all of, you know, she has a death certificate, you know, she's legally dead, and like how do you give her back all of the, you know, her estate that's been distributed and stuff. Yeah, I had those kinds of dreams after she died, and man, I don't know, there's so much weirdness around that, I guess.
You know, that brings up a really interesting kind of concept that a lot of people play into, and it's this whole concept of and I may not be explaining this very well, but when tragedy strikes, no matter how big or how small, there is a battle cry that says, why did you let this happen to me, God?
Mm.
And in that way, deity, whatever deity you are looking at, excuse me, becomes the punching bag for your anger, for your grief. And people hold these grudges, like legit hold these grudges. And I don't subscribe to the idea that God is a magician.
Mm.
God is not this all-powerful force that on a whim makes decisions and says, you know what? I'm gonna let this rogue person in the middle of the ocean who's been cut off from oxygen for 29 minutes. Yeah, I'm gonna let this guy live. But there's a whole school bus full of children that flies off a cliff and they all die, right? Yeah, that seems like a fair trade. And that is such a, I'm not gonna say foreign concept, but that is such an, I feel like, I'm sorry, but I feel like it's an ignorant perspective to have. Now, we all have knee-jerk reactions where we say, why, God? Why? Why did you let this happen to me? Okay, fine. But once we kind of start to move past that a little bit, where people just hold on to these grudges against deity, I don't really truly understand, because you understand that you have agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have agency.
Some people don't, but yes, I do.
People have agency. You can do anything you want to do. And if that's hurt someone, you're allowed to do that. Or not that you're allowed to do that, but
you can do that, yeah.
You can. You can perform terrible atrocities in the world. But guess what? You can also perform incredible opportunities for people. You have more opportunity to lift people up than you do to tear people down. And for all, like, how many of us when we have like a really truly incredible thing happen, and sometimes it might be a mundane thing. You might find $50 on the sidewalk and no one's around. You go, well, I guess I'm $50 richer. Did you thank God that that happened? Most people wouldn't.
No.
Uh, uh, somebody apologizes, somebody hurt you. It wasn't a huge thing. It was just kind of a like somebody did you dirty, right? And then that person realizes it and they come to you and they say, hey, I did a really shitty thing. I'm really sorry. Is there any way that you can forgive me? How many people thank God for inspiring that person?
No, that's never a God thing.
So there's a clear imbalance where it's easy to blame as well as give credit to this phantom character that we all hope is there. Whether some people believe that God exists or not. There's, I think, with a lot of people, there is a hope that there is something controlling everything. So yeah, I don't know. That's always kind of irked me when people like in the face of tragedy, and like 9/11 is a huge example. Like, God, why did you let terrorists kill 5,000 to 6,000 people in a building and all this stuff? More than that with the Pentagon in Pittsburgh. But still, like, why did you let this happen? Well, we have agency. That is the really only truly true thing that we have that's ours.
Yeah.
So take away agency, you don't have anything. And that is, if you believe in deity,
thank God for free will.
Literally. Yeah. And even in that, how many people in their nightly prayers thank God for free will?
Oh no, nobody does.
Very few.
Yeah, I don't think anyone does.
And then when you say that to someone who does pray, they would be like, oh, well, I do.
I feel like that it's one of those things where it'd be like, if they see, I don't know, if they believe in God, then they're more likely to believe that God is guiding them, which means that there is less free will, like in some ways, I feel like.
Well, no, I still believe that both things can be true. It's like
yes, but
you in the right direction.
But I think that sometimes it is used as an excuse.
Oh, right, yeah.
Against free will. It's like, no, but God is guiding me. God is making this happen. So it's not me. It's
Jesus, take the wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
You're still driving, hillbilly.
Absolutely. All right. Should we actually pull out some cards now?
Let's do it.
I'm gonna pull something from Cards and Conversation, I guess, this time, which is
deck.
The card deck that's actually like a deck of cards.
Oh.
Do you want to pick a suit or a it's not even in order, so I don't know. Let's go with the King of Hearts.
Ooh, King of Hearts.
King of Hearts. No idea what the questions are in here, but there are multiple ones. Okay, here's a good one.
There's 52 questions.
No, there's 5 questions on each card.
What?
And then there are jokers in there as well. Or at least one joker in there. It might be 2.
Any Batmans?
It's just the Joker and Harley Quinn. No. Okay, how do you calm yourself when you get angry? I don't think we've asked a question like this. We've talked about anger before, but I don't think we've talked about how we calm ourselves when we get angry?
I get very quiet when I get angry, and it's rare that I get angry, but whenever I do, I get very internal rage that just sits inside of me, and I rarely do anything about it. Um, so it just festers and festers and festers, and um, I. It also depends on the level of anger, right? The more angry I am about something, I I try, at least I try, I hope I try to understand what is making me angry right now. Because so often we have knee-jerk reactions, like emotions just hit us and we don't know why we're angry. We know that we are
Mhm.
angry, but it's hard to identify. Sometimes it's easy to identify the trigger
Mhm.
of what made us angry, but it's hard to identify why we're angry, which are two very different things.
Yeah, because sometimes it comes from, a, the trigger reminds us of something in our past, right? But like in a subconscious level, and we don't know what it was. And
Yes.
so being able to dig deep into understanding, um, yeah, I had one of those kinds of experiences over the weekend of like, over the weekend or last week, within the past week, sometime within the past week, of
Very recently.
noticing a trigger and comparing it with patterns of other situations like that in the past, so I could figure out what was the trigger that, and once you're able to identify it, then it's actually easier to take a step back when you notice it happening again. When you notice you're triggered and you're like, oh, it's that trigger again. And then you can take a step back and reflect more, and make it can become easier to respond to the situation. Not always, but yeah.
For me, I like, because I said, I get very quiet, but I also need to talk it out. Once I've identified, and sometimes talking it out helps me identify, but I need to talk it out with either a trusted confidant, usually Kim, or with the person who made me upset. Sometimes at Lucky's Bar, where I work, sometimes there will be someone coming into the bar and they say something or they're condescending, and it just gets like instant rage. And it's usually the condescension. That's a big trigger for me, is when people disrespect with condescension. It's anyway. So sometimes when you're the subject of that, I try, like, you go in the back room, you just get all your curse words out, and then hopefully you've calmed down just a little bit, and then approach the person and apologize. And that's the hard part, is when you are the party that's been offended, to be the person
Mhm.
to apologize is so fucking difficult. But if you are able to do that, you're then able to disarm the other
Mhm.
person. Is hopefully, if they're like a rational human. If they're just a dick, then they're just a dick, and there's nothing to be done.
Mhm.
But yeah, if they're a rational person, hopefully you can say, "Hey, look, I'm really sorry if I offended you in any kind of a way. If I did, I didn't mean to." And then try to open up some kind of a dialogue. Sometimes that works, and sometimes that doesn't. But yeah, I need to talk through it with people that I trust.
Same. Yeah, I definitely need to. I have a couple of people, depending on what it is that's triggered my anger. Might depend on who I reach out to discuss it with, but I pretty much always need to vent my anger somewhere, so that I'm not lashing out at the person who triggered me to feel that way.
Right.
Because I don't want to blame them necessarily, because, you know, maybe they're dealing with their own shit that they didn't mean to, you know, make me feel a particular way.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely have to be able to, and, you know, sometimes having that conversation, it can help me work out, am I being irrational here? Is there a legit reason for me to feel upset and angry at this situation? Do I have a right to be offended? Is there anything in this situation that I'm not seeing from the other person's perspective? That's one of the things that helps me calm down, is try to look at the situation from the other person's perspective. If it's like another person that has done something that made me feel angry, I do try and look at the bigger picture of the situation. And so, I mean, sometimes that means that I don't end up venting my anger and letting another person know that I felt angry as a result of their actions. And then they don't realize that they have upset me, and so then they don't apologize as well. But
of course, if they're not aware,
yeah. But yeah, it's a tricky thing, and writing stuff out helps me process things as well. So journaling, writing stuff out, and especially if I don't have somebody else like who I can immediately talk to about something, then I'm going to probably write about it just for myself first to help me process things.
I want to make a connection between what you just said about writing things out and also kind of going back to what we were previously talking about of like God and deity and stuff like that. Is a little off topic, but
go ahead.
A little bit of a non sequitur. I have, for a long time, I've had a hard time getting myself to pray. Now, I do believe that there is something out there. It's just easier to refer to this thing as God, whether it's God, whether it's an energy, whether it's something. I do believe that there is a consciousness guiding the whole creation, blah blah blah, whatever. And I have had a really hard time in the past few years communicating with this entity, whether it is, I think a big part of it is pride, because I grew up knowing that it was God, or at least I grew up being told that I know that it is God, and that, you know, in order to understand how the universe works, you have to get to know God through this book. And I think there's some merit there. I do. But anyway, here's where I'm going with this. I have this idea, and I haven't done it yet, that I very much kind of do want to continue on with, or start doing, rather, is instead of getting on my knees and folding my arms and, you know, saying a prayer verbally to whoever will hear it, I thought it might be an interesting idea to write everything down and articulate my prayer or desires or my inner thoughts exactly the way that I want them to sound on paper. And, you know, I can address it to God. I can address it to my dad. I can address it to anyone, Chris Farley. I can address it to anybody that I want. Can I have like a private moment to myself out on the balcony, maybe upstairs on the roof, whatever, and just make a small, tiny little, like a sterno fire, basically, and just set the paper on fire and let the smoke and the embers be delivered to where they're supposed to go. I don't know why I'm telling you this. It's not.
It's a vulnerable thing to share.
Yeah. I don't really have a purpose or an end game of like, well, tell me your thoughts. Is this a dumb idea to do? I don't really have any real objective. Just a thing that I kind of felt like sharing.
No, I appreciate that. I do. I don't feel like that's an unusual thing. I think there are people that would use that kind of method to kind of put out into the world what it is that they're, wanting or, wanting to express. I've not done anything in that particular way, but I'm genuinely fairly certain that there are other people that do. It had me thinking about, because I know that I don't know how much have thought about like manifestations and stuff, but I feel like a lot of people who try to manifest things in their lives do it in a written way, or to kind of envision what they have in mind about what they want for their future.
Like a rudimentary example could be like a vision board.
Yeah, that's a visual way of doing it. But yeah, I've definitely done some writing kinds of stuff, and it's helped me kind of put into words what I would like to have in a romantic partner, for example, as I've been processing my past relationships and what worked and what didn't, and what it is that I need to have in order to be like, this feels right, or nope, next. So yeah.
Kind of an interesting example of that just popped into my mind was Jim Carrey. Do you know the story about how he wrote himself a check for $1 million?
I think you might have shared this before.
I
don't know. I feel like I've heard it from somebody.
I haven't thought of this for so long, but the whole thing is that when he first started in comedy, brand new, didn't really know what he was doing, he wrote himself a check for $1 million, and he signed it, and he I don't think he post dated it. I think it was just whatever, and he gave himself like a time limit. I want to say it was a year, maybe it was like 6 years or whatever, something like that. But he gave himself a time limit and said, in 6 years from this date, I am going to cash this check. And that was just one of those things that he like did for himself. I don't think he told anybody about it until much, much later.
Yeah.
But that was just a him thing to like motivate himself to be like, I am cashing this check. It is happening. I don't know how. I don't know what method I need to go down, but I'm going to do what I need to do to try and figure this out.
Yeah. There's a lot of amazing stories like that out there, like where people have actually, they don't know how something's going to happen, but they put it into words or writing, then eventually it kind of, I mean, I don't think it happens for everyone who tries that, but it can sometimes be the instigator that you need in order to push yourself in the direction that you need to go to reach those goals, right? Once you've set yourself a kind of thing in place like that. Yeah.
So you're dressed as an angel right now.
Yes.
Do you believe in God? Or God, deity, entity?
I use the term universe. So I do feel like there's something out there that can influence what happens. I don't use the word God because I feel like it's, I don't know, just the way that I was raised to believe what God is, I don't feel like it's exactly that. But the way I describe the universe would be the way that some people see God. Just because like there have been various situations and circumstances in my life where it's been like I don't know how things just fit together and fall into place and have just been gifted to me on a silver platter in some cases, where, I mean, not literally, but things have just worked out the way that they needed to for me. And I'm like, it just feels like there must be something more than just coincidence behind that. I mean, you have to be open to seeing and recognizing patterns and signs and, bits and pieces. But my getting a job when I did after my divorce felt like it happened at just the right time that it needed to. And this is such a weird example. I don't know how people would take this, but COVID hit right in the midst of my divorce, and I feel like if COVID had not come when it did, my divorce would have gone a completely different way. My ex-husband would have fought tooth and nail through the divorce process, but because of COVID and the lockdown and stuff, and him being forced to live with me but not being able to go out and see his other partners because of the lockdowns, and my brother came to stay with me for some of that time as well, and he couldn't stand being in the house with me and my brother, and so it was kind of like he had to be that forced him to speed up the divorce process because he just wanted to get out. And so that's kind of an example of it was an advantage for me that this came along. I mean, it was a horrible thing to happen in the world, but it improved my situation. And me deciding to study data analytics during the pandemic kind of happened as a result of me seeing ads for the program in Facebook. And I'm just like, I guess I'll try this out. And so, when you are on the lookout for, even if it's not intentionally, but if you can be open to opportunities that kind of present themselves to you in different ways, then you can be like, maybe this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Do you think that there is a divine, what's the word I'm looking for? Do you think that there is a divine purpose behind organized religion?
Divine purpose behind organized religion is a human thing, though. So I don't feel like that's a divinely guided thing.
It can be. I feel like organized religion 100% can be a man-made machination, which is the second time I've used that word today. But do you think that there could be, assuming that there is this universal guidance or purpose or reasoning or or just reason for being and existing that nudges us in one direction or another, that has value and purpose in an organized sense of gathering people together for a central purpose or reason?
I guess it depends on how that is, the community comes together and what they're using it with, because I feel like there is so much with organized religion these days that is contrary to what it seems like they're taught with their religious texts. I like the idea of the community and loving your neighbor and like the positive stuff that can come from it.
Sure.
I don't know how much to ascribe that to a deity or divinity or any of that.
Yeah.
Because there are atheists who don't believe in anything and still ascribe to those kinds of having a life purpose and
Obviously.
morals and having morality and ethics and things without being part of any organized religion. So,
well, I'm not trying to say that organized religion creates good people. I think that, and I've thought this for a very long time, but I do think that it's a little bit of a scapegoat answer to say that religion, the organized religion, that there's no good purpose for it, that there's no good that can come out of it. It's kind of the popular thing to hate on organized religions.
Oh, I would not say that. No, I mean, there are definitely moral religious people. I'm not going to say that there are not. And I will not judge every single Christian based on the bad eggs in the bunch.
Sure. Well, even Catholicism got a really bad rap it still kind of does for a long time. And it's like everyone just jumped on the hating on Catholicism bandwagon because it was popular. It was easy. It's easy to point fingers at some really disgusting things. And yes, the head of the Pope at the time was covering it all up. Like they all knew, we all know that they knew, and they covered it all up. Okay, that's terrible. They all need to be held accountable, but that doesn't make the institution itself inherently evil or wrong, because there's still so much good that comes out of that organization from people that had nothing to do with any of those terrible things.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you seen Keeping the Faith yet?
I haven't had time. I totally forgot, to be honest.
It's fine. Yeah. Consider this your reminder now.
You know what? I don't have a ton of plans tomorrow, so maybe that's what I'll end up doing. Except for going back to tap dancing class tomorrow.
Nice. I might go to a stand-up comedy show that's a new night that they're wanting to create an ongoing thing that is kind of nearby to where I live. So I thought I might go check it out. We'll see. No details, because then I'd be doxing myself. Finding more closer where I live there. Anyway,
that happens a lot. Like every now and again, like there's YouTubers, one in particular, that I follow, and every now and again he'll post a video, and I go like, but you're at home and your electric bill is on your counter and we can all see your address. Like,
oh my God, what?
One time he posted a video of his new studio, like film studio, where he would broadcast from for his YouTube channel. and he was giving kind of like a behind the scenes kind of personalized tour. And he opened up the closet and he said, oh, yep. And in here, this is where you have all the tech, like all the routers and the servers and everything. And the Wi-Fi password was right there.
Oh my God.
And so I messaged him and I'm like, hey, man, I'm just like one of a few million people that follow you, but like, kind of goofed. I don't think anything became of it, but yeah, I was just like, every now and again, like stuff like that happens. And I'm like, ooh, be careful.
My ex-husband, was doing some things some years back that got our address legitimately doxxed by some of his haters, and nothing ever came from it. Like nobody came to my house or anything, but it was legit a fear that I had. Like seeing him make like really stupid decisions, I was terrified that he was going to get us doxxed and like people coming after us and stuff. Like, this is one of the reasons why I didn't want him in my life anymore. Like, I'm glad that I'm kicking him out. But man, there was a time after he'd already moved out, he messaged me and sent me a link to an Instagram account that had doxed my address, thinking that he still lived here. But by the time I looked at it, which was at basically the same time that he messaged it to me, it had already been taken down. So I'm just like, okay, maybe think about your actions and worry about protecting your kids more than whatever crap you're doing that is causing people to want to dox you. It would be smart. But yeah. So
be careful out there, kids.
Be careful for sure. Although, at this point, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about whether or not I want to relocate. Not because I'm worried about being doxxed reasons, but just like the state of things has made me wonder. I mean, I was just today looking on LinkedIn. Are there any jobs that I could apply for in Malaysia? Because I so badly want to be back there. Not that I see that as like a legit path for me, because I don't think that my kids would want to move back there. But like I've also been, looking at jobs in Australia and seeing if I want to go back there as well. So I don't know. Maybe it's time for me to leave.
How would your kids feel about that?
When I talked to them about it earlier this year, late last year maybe, they both said that they wanted to stay here, or they kind of had this expectation that this house would always be around because this is where they've lived for the last 10 years, right? Oh, 10 and a half years now, almost 11.
Also, as you and I, as adults, as older children, you and I as older children know, once you move out of the house and your parents have kind of moved and sold that house that you grew up in, it doesn't really matter all that much.
My sister still lives in the house that I grew up in.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I retract my statement.
I mean, she moved out for a while, but then she ended up moving in, with her partner, and now she has a couple of kids there. But yeah.
Well, good for them.
Yeah. So that house is solely hers now. She bought out my brothers and my share of the house, so it's all in her name.
Hope you made bank.
Pardon?
I hope you made bank.
It was whatever. What I made from it was part of what I used to buy the car that I currently drive.
Hey.
So there's that. Which is not worth anywhere near as much as what I paid for it because I bought it new. And that was in 2015. I was, oh my God, I've had my car for almost exactly 10 years because it was April 2015 that I bought it. It is. It's been a while. Yeah.
Do you want to do one more question? I kind of feel like our conversation is starting to wind down a little bit.
Okay, let me see. There's another question on here. Okay, how about what have you learned about yourself or others recently?
Probably that I'm not as put together as I think I am.
You want to elaborate on that?
I've made a few like really big blunders in the past few months. It's like, you live life, you think you're doing well, you're on the right track, and for the most part you are. Get married to this gorgeous woman who's so cool and so put together and so manages herself so well and with such grace. And she accepts you for who you are. And then one day you wake up and then you realize that I'm not going to go into details, but you wake up and you realize that you're not as good with money as you think you are.
Okay.
And then tax season rolls around and you kind of drop the ball a little bit. And I just made a few like really dumb mistakes at work, at Lucky's, and let's just say that I'm not on the schedule.
Oh.
Yeah. Not for anything nefarious, just out of sight, out of mind. Just being lackadaisical and not on top of my shit the way that I should be. So you go through these long periods where you're like, oh yeah, like I've got this great life. I mean, no life is perfect. But for the most part, you got a few things figured out. And then every now and again, you get a few reminders, and mine just happened to come a whole bunch over, past few months. Just reminders that, hey, you know how cool you feel that you are right now? Yeah, no, you're not. You don't have your life together as well as you think you do. And just they're all just like really dumb mistakes. So what was the question?
What was something that you'd learned about yourself or others recently?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as put together as sometimes I think I am.
I definitely know that I'm not. I mean, I haven't been working for the last several months, and this is actually my last week that I'm getting any kind of unemployment benefits. That's
You're
how
not
long
allowed to extend?
I don't think there is any way to extend.
Oh no.
So and this week is only like a partial payment because of there were a couple of weeks that I did video work and I claimed that as income for those weeks, and so that reduced whatever I was paid for those weeks. So I have a little bit of like extra for this week as a result of that. I'm not like scared at this point. Like I have savings at the moment to get me through, and I'm going back to what we were talking about earlier with do I believe in like a deity or something like that. I want to believe that the universe will give me what it is that I need when I need it.
Right.
There have been a couple of situations where I thought I was going to have something, and I'm like, this is the universe gifting this thing to me that I need, and then it just hasn't worked out. So maybe I'm just still have to wait for whatever that is. Because like I said, like that's just how jobs have worked for me in the past. Like when I was working as a tour guide, I got that because it was another situation was just kind of handed to me. Not handed to me per se, but like I got that job because an improviser I'm friends with, her partner was looking for tour guides. And so my friend was like, would you consider doing this? And I'm like, sure. And I'd met her partner before. So, I already had kind of an established relationship to some extent with the hiring manager. And so it was like, it just worked out. Now I could have been like, oh no, I couldn't. Yeah, that doesn't sound like my kind of thing. Because I had previously been a tour guide when I was 17. And, I lasted 3 weeks in that job. So I could have been like, oh, I don't think I could do that. But, my friend was like, I felt like my friend believed in me, and that helped me to just go after and see, like, we'll see what happens. And things worked out. And likewise, the job that I got during the pandemic, it was the first tech-related job that I interviewed for after I finished my certificate in data analytics, and I got it. They hired somebody else, but then they created a part-time role for me because they liked me so much. So it was like the universe is just gifts it to me as as I need it. So I want to believe that is what's going to happen as needed, and maybe it hasn't happened yet because I have to take my ex-husband back to court for child support reasons and to force him to get a proper job. Maybe that's why it's on pause right now. I don't know. But I'm doing what I can. I'm learning more programming stuff at the moment to help me have even more skills that I can show what I can do. And we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Well, right there.
But that's not my answer to this question. So the question was, what have you learned about yourself or others recently? I talked to my therapist about this yesterday as well. And I don't know, I'm going to get into all of the details, but I talked recently about earlier tonight about identifying triggers, like what can trigger you. And so I was just in this past week identified something that triggers me. Now I was able to like take a step back. I didn't react to this situation how I felt it in the moment. I was able to take a step back and reflect. And what I realized was this was a pattern that I've seen from various people in my life. And the trigger is when somebody who I care about accuses me or says something to me in a way that sounds like they're accusing me of not caring about them. So it's contrary to how I feel.
I remember you kind of vaguely talking about this either last week or 2 weeks ago, but you shared a story that was in line with this, but I don't think it was as succinct as identifying this trigger. But please continue.
Yeah. So no, I don't remember talking about it. Maybe I did, but I haven't rewatched those streams. So so it's specifically when somebody that in my mind, I care about them. And then they say something in a way that sounds like they're accusing me of not caring about them. And especially when it feels like they're ignoring all of the things that I've done that shows that I care about them. Like in my mind, like I've done this and I've done that. How are you ignoring all of these stuff to come to the conclusion that I don't care about you?
Yeah.
that is I've now identified that as a massive trigger. And I know probably started from the years of my ex-husband doing that to me. And so if other people, they might not be as blunt about it, or they might not share it in the same way that my ex-husband did. But now that I can see that other people might say something like that to me, it reminds me, it triggers me into that past with my ex-husband of, you don't care about me. So like my great example of, I think I've talked about this before, where my ex-husband thought that me spending all my time doing improv meant that I didn't care about him. So that was a big thing. And so it's like, you don't care about me because you're not doing this, or you're not, cleaning the house, or you're not doing that. So these are all the things that mean that I didn't care about him. I'm like, but then when I tried to do more, then he still couldn't see that I was doing all these things to try and show that I cared about him. And so it kind of gets to a point where it was like, well, if you're not going to notice the things that I'm doing that I care about you, then you're looking for a reason to gripe at me.
Yeah.
You're focusing on the ways that I'm not meeting your needs, instead of focusing on the things that would show you that I care, right? And I recognize that in those situations, I need to not get defensive and point out all the reasons that I.
Which is so tough.
It is so hard. It is so hard to not get defensive and to not point out like the reasons why they're wrong, because what they're ultimately trying to say is they're not trying to accuse you of something. They're trying to say, you got to try and look beneath that. What is they trying to say? They feel hurt because you didn't do something, and that is something that they think that you need to do in order to show that you care about them. Mm-hmm. Now, can they phrase things in a better way? Sure, absolutely. But if they've been triggered, then they're not coming at it from a place of safety. So they're just going to say it in a way that's sorry?
Or rationale.
Mm. Yeah. So, it's really, I feel like because I've been spending so much time, reading more and seeing more about attachment style wounds and, automatic self-protection reactions and that kind of thing, it makes it easier for me to step back now, but it is still really hard for me to not want to react from that defensive place.
Have you ever considered going into social work?
Yes, but I feel like I need, to have studied something completely different. I feel like I need more education in order to get into that kind of line of work.
I mean, maybe, but also maybe not. Like, there are so many different levels of social work where, like, there are social workers where their entire job is to do wellness checks. That's it. Or just to be a friend to someone who is struggling. It's not always, this child who has been neglected needs to be put into foster care. Like, it's not always that. There's so many different levels and shades of social work. I think you would be fucking magnificent at that. I really do.
Thank you.
And for anyone else who agrees with me, comment in the
anyone who's watching later on, because we've not had right now. Restream is suggesting that we have a viewer, but YouTube says that nobody has maybe somebody clicked in for like 2 seconds. And that's why it looks like somebody is watching. Yeah. I do.
Think about it.
The thing is that, like, when I've tried to help people by sharing my experiences, sometimes they still get triggered and defensive, and then they get upset with me. So it can be really challenging.
Well,
still,
don't share your
anyway.
experiences then.
So.
Just be the listener.
Yeah. No, I could do that. That's true. But no, I mean, even in terms of like with giving advice, because that's, some people don't like to hear the advice.
Just something to think about. Look into it.
Yeah.
Do it because I said so, and it was a thought that came from my
I feel like this is why I write and share my experiences, because then the people who want to take it in will be able to kind of apply it to their own lives, and not everyone is open to it, right? But
sure, yeah. But we also live in a world where monetization is a necessity. So
yeah. People need to buy my memoir when it comes out. Eventually, I'm going to release it.
But you currently have a published work of sci-fi out.
Yes.
Tell us more about that, and where can people buy it?
Tell you more about my novel that I've written is a speculative fiction novel. So sort of sci-fi, sort of fantasy, but a blend of the two, because it's got time travel, it's got mermaids in it, it's got pirates in it. It's got, some basis in history. Like I did do, historical research to fit it into the timeline that it's in. So like I had no idea before I wrote this book that Oliver Cromwell was a thing. Like there was a period of time in England where there was not a monarchy.
Really?
Very briefly, yeah. And so, I have one character who is a staunch monarchist who's like upset that there's no king presently, and then like is supportive when they try and get the king back and
Well,
stuff.
that's kind of a lovely discovery.
Yeah. I love the research that I did for it. I was telling someone recently about how I also researched like when words were invented or like created, because when you have a character from the mid 1600s traveling through time into the year 2011, as it is the case in my book, which is called Adrift, I had to think about what her language, what words would she be familiar with, and what words would she not understand when communicating with people in the current modern day. I published it in 2013, so 2011 was modern back then, because that was when I was writing it. And so, like, I think one word in particular was what would the word punk mean to her? Because we know punk to mean is like this, kind of deadbeat kind of person nowadays. But it was actually a word that was used in, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, it was a word that she would have been familiar with from the 1600s, but meant completely something different. It was basically the first iteration of the word was to mean prostitute. And I was like, wow, that's a very so I loved doing that kind of linguistic research. Hi. I think someone probably called her a punk or something, and she's like, what? So it was fun. It's one of those fish out of water stories, but I feel like a lot of time travel stories is more the, someone from today's era traveling to a different time period, right? Rather than someone from the past traveling into the future and being like,
So
um,
growing up Mormon, of course, you're so like ingrained in the culture of Mormonism. And there was a Mormon author named John, by the way. That is his actual name, by the way.
wow.
John, by the
Wow.
way. And he wrote Mormon fiction novels, and his most popular series, and it became a big series amongst the teen age, youth, young adult um, Mormon community, which was called Tennis Shoes Among the Nephites. Now, the Nephites, for anyone who needs a little Mormon education,
Yes.
so you have the Bible, right? And then you have the Book of Mormon, where we get the nickname Mormons, right? So the Book of Mormon is a historical compilation of the people who lived in North American, South American continent um, from 600 years, 600 years before Christ was born until 400 years after he was born. So 1,000 years worth of history, all condensed and compiled into this one tiny little book that is even smaller than my iPad, called the Book of Mormon, right? There are two main tribes um, here. You have the Nephites, aka the good guys, and then you have the Lamanites, aka the bad guys. It's more nuanced than that, but whatever. So he wrote this fictional story called Tennis Shoes Among the Nephites, of these kids who lived in Colorado, and one of them finds a cave, and this mystical legend of the rainbow room inside the cave, and so they fall into the cave, go through this whole waterfall kind of experience, and then when the water like pushes them out of like on the other side of the cave, whatever, they're not in their own time anymore. They've time traveled to like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, however long, back to the time when the Nephites used to war against the Lamanites. And so it was that whole idea embedded this idea, that whole concept embedded this idea into my brain of like, what would it be like if I went back in time? How would I try to communicate with people? What would it be like if someone from the past came to the future? What would they think of all of like, how do you explain, because we have flying cars now, how would you explain what a flying car is? How would you explain what an iPad is, or like a phone? How would you explain that? How do
Oh
you
yeah.
like, and that whole concept is so fascinating to me. Like if I like terminology that we use that just goes for granted. Like, hey man, what's up? How would that translate to 2,000 years ago when, hey man, what's up? Like that, we know what that means.
Yeah.
Hey man, what's up? Like what, like how do you explain that stuff? Anyway.
Sounds like you would do well to read my novel where I explored some of those questions. Yeah.
Say that first part again.
So it sounds like you would do well to read my novel where I explored some of those questions. Yeah, because like my character who travels through time, she's a pirate, right? She's a pirate from the mid 1600s and traveling through into 2011. And so, the first time she sees a smartphone, she's like, you have a magic box. And, she has to travel on a plane to come to the US because she, like, when she travels through time, she ends up in Barbados. And then she meets an American guy there who somehow manages to get her into the US. But like she flies to the US with him.
You establish a world where time travel exists, so I'm pretty sure you can get past customs.
No. I think I had her get like forged like fake passport and everything. I kind of remember how I made that happen. But yeah, so like she learns about like planes and things, and she goes into she goes to Washington DC and like learns about space travel at the National Air and Space Museum. And like so like all of this stuff is just like astonishing to and I role played as this character to write that scene in the book. Like I went to Washington DC dressed as Jacqueline, my pirate, and role played as her at the National Air and Space Museum, and just like was looking around that museum as if I was a 17th century pirate.
And then you get to interact with people there and see like, oh, I never anticipated this is how random strangers would react to this character.
Well, I wasn't wearing my glasses at the time, so I couldn't see. But the person I was hanging out with and doing all of this with me, like he was telling me when people were staring, because like I couldn't tell because I wasn't wearing my glasses. I was oblivious.
That's really cool. I like that.
I think so. Like when I went through the security at the museum, the security guard was like, "Is this some kind of acting thing?" And I'm like, "Oh, kind of like that." I don't know. Lego Timmy is on board.
Lego Timmy. It's been a long time since we heard
got
from Lego
a
Timmy.
question for us?
Oh, got a good question. All right, lay it on us.
Better be a good one.
Anytime now. Anytime Lego Timmy.
Look, I can keep talking about going and dressing it. I didn't just, we wandered around other parts of Washington, D.C. with me dressed as a pirate as well. And God, it was just such a blast. But like, it didn't feel like it was that weird. And maybe it's because like there's a lot of weird people in Washington, D.C. anyway. But yeah, it was a fun thing. I was wearing a wig. Like my hair is like it is now, but like the wig was like this, right? But at the time, it was my hair had been bleached and had different, like it had dyed different hair colors, and but it was like faded out. But that meant that 17th century pirate is not going to have like weird hair colors. I have to have a wig to make it a natural hair color. So I have a natural brown haired wig specifically for that character.
Just reminded me of something, and I'm going through my phone to see if I can find this photo. Years ago, again, as I grew up Mormon, I was in Ireland as a missionary, and then on one of our days off, you can kind of do whatever you want to do on your day off. And so this one day, I thought it would be really funny because we were all going to like just play tourist and just go around the city in Dublin and see what there was to see and do whatever, right? Oh, I don't have it readily available. I'll find it and I'll send it to you. So I thought it would be funny to like over exaggerate myself and dress up as like your stereotypical American tourist in Ireland. Mm-hmm. And I like hitched my pants up to like over my belly. I was wearing this bright like Ireland t-shirt. I had this camera like around my neck. I looked so goofy, like so goofy. And my personality was just very like, ooh, what's that? Wow. Like all this stuff. And everyone that I was with, it was just like, Mike, you have to stop. This is so embarrassing. I'm sorry. I'm being embarrassing right now. Does everybody hear that? I'm so sorry. Look, Ireland. Right? It was I did it for me. Most of the stuff that I did as a kid growing up was all like Andy Kaufman-esque. Like I didn't do it for anyone else's entertainment, just my own.
Yeah, that's reminding me of when I went to Ireland. I bought one of those like big green Irish hats.
I know well. I know them well.
and I wore it in. I did it like a 6-day tour around the Republic of Ireland, and the very end of the tour.
Thank you for calling it the Republic of Ireland, because so few people know that.
Well, there's the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, but the Republic of Ireland is where I did the tour. But then I also did a day tour up to Belfast in Northern Ireland as well. But at the end of my 6-day tour, we had a stop at the Guinness factory in Dublin, and that I was wearing that giant green hat in the Guinness factory, and just, like so dumb. Mike, do you feel okay with me I know you've preferred to not have political questions in this particular stream, so are you okay with me answering the question? Do you want me to bring it up, or would you prefer?
I can't see it because the questions aren't coming up on my.
You're not on the page for it?
Well, I mean, they usually show up like
on the side. And
right,
you can't see them?
Yeah.
You're not in the chat thing? Is it?
No, I am. It's just nothing.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. Well, I'll bring it up and you can let me know. So Timmy is asking me why I don't like Trump. Obviously, he has seen from or gotten that impression from the stuff that I have shared on various stuff. I don't mind answering the question, but if you...
No, go for it.
Okay. So for me, he is a liar. He cheats people out of things. He does... Yeah, I guess he sticks to his word in the horrible ways that he, things that he says that he wants to do. He only cares about himself and, getting himself ahead. He doesn't actually care about anyone else in the world. That's genuinely the impression that I have from him. He reminds me a lot of abusers, the kinds of actions that he takes, and he does not strike me as a good person. He lies and manipulates to get what he wants. That's my genuine opinion.
I will chime in. I typically try to avoid political conversations. When specifically surrounding Donald Trump, and even more specifically surrounding the 2024 elections. Mostly because I'm just so fucking sick and tired of it. But also, no one is changing anyone's minds.
Yeah, anymore. Exactly.
It's like discussing it isn't. I kind of feel like we're past the point of not making amends with each other. I don't think we're past the point in healing relationships with people that we disagree with. I definitely still think that that we're still there, but I think we are so far past the point in trying to change people's minds. I really do. I echo. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, it seems to be that the people who agree with him are not going to see the perspectives of those who disagree with him until they are personally hurt by Trump's actions.
No. I agree with everything that you said. I also think that it is important to keep in mind that the world that we live in and have lived in for quite a very, very long time, and I mean a very long time as in well over 100 years, is that to be a politician, means to play the game of shifting power, because the definition of politics is just simply the transition of power. That's it. That's all it is. So to be a politician, you have to understand the game of when to take power, of when to release power. And all of that means, so I've been watching a lot of like Survivor lately,
Oh.
and a lot of those like competitive reality television shows that I've historically been like, yeah, I'm good. Like I don't, but something, the bug got inside of me, so I've been watching a lot of that lately. And one of the things that I've noticed is that here are these incredibly passionate, competitive individuals who are just like the rest of us, right? We're not talking about celebrities. We're not talking about like professional reality television stars. We're talking about regular people. And they are forced to become a different person when they're on Survivor so that they can win the $1 million, right? So they can win the competition. And that is the person that you become when you go into politics. Now, I definitely believe that there are some politicians who are more moral than others, but I think we are all kidding ourselves and turning a blind eye if we blindly say the Democratic Party is like we're never liars.
No,
They
absolutely.
they're the most moral person, because on the other side of the coin, the Republicans are also saying we are the most moral party there is, and we look at contradictions all the time, and there's millions of contradictions to those things, right? The Republican Party represents XYZ, the Democratic Party represents ABC, and in order to have and gain power and to get the thing that you want means making deals with people. Going back to Survivor, you want to survive on the island? Well, guess what? You need to sacrifice your moral value, your moral compass, so that you can play the players, so that you can have an advantage and get further in the game. And that's the same thing with politics and politicians. They have to sacrifice certain parts of themselves, and then when they get called out for it, they may have done it for what they believed were the right reasons, but you still did a horrible thing, whether that's Republican or whether that's Democrat or any of the other
and I
parties.
genuinely I do feel like every politician should be prepared to be criticized for their choices and how they vote. I don't think it's like, oh, all the Republicans are bad and none of the and all of the Democrats are good. I genuinely do not feel that way. People have voted in ways, people that I would have wanted to support might have voted in a way of like, I don't agree with that. There was I have a great example of like a local example. Okay, so a couple of years ago, so I live in Oakland, California, and we had a mayor election a couple of years back, and in Oakland, it's ranked choice voting. So like your preference is by this is my number one preference, this is my number two preference. That's how we do the voting for mayor in Oakland. And for my first choice, I voted for the person who ended up being elected, but she was not somebody that a lot of people liked. So she won it as a result of the ranked choice voting. And if it had been like, just your first vote, she wouldn't have won, right? And so a lot of people were like really upset. But then last year, it was revealed that she was getting investigated by the FBI for corruption charges. And so during the election last year, the November election last year, on the ballot was, do you want to recall the Oakland mayor? And I voted to recall her. Even though I'd voted to put her in power, I voted to recall her because it had turned out that she may have been corrupt.
Because you're a rational person. So, and you understand that just because you made a decision 4 years ago doesn't mean that you need to be beholden to that when new information comes.
And she was, Democrat. Pretty sure she was a Democrat. And so it's like I could recognize when a choice when I might have made a mistake. I'm like, oh, I liked her story. I voted for her because she was a Vietnamese immigrant who had experienced homelessness in her history. So I thought maybe that meant that she would be able to address those issues from a more understanding place, right? And when it turns out that she's being investigated by the FBI, I'm like, you know what? I don't think that that's what I want to have in America. So, we have these. That's why it's really hard for me to comprehend how someone like Trump can have those supporters that will just not let it go, even in the face of that kind of evidence. It's just really hard for me to I do understand in a sense because I recognize gaslighting and I've been in an abusive situation, so I can recognize the signs of all that manipulation that he does. And when you're sucked into that situation where you want to believe it so badly, you have this cognitive dissonance, right? That you just, it's really hard for you to grasp that what you believe about this person is not actually the reality. It's really hard to get out of that. And then especially when you have all of your friends from the other side of the political spectrum who have ousted you at this point, you're like, well, this is my community. These are the people that believe what I believe. It's really hard to get out of that. And I do like to think that I would be, I'm more open to being able to listen to somebody once they're able to get out of that. And I'm not going to be like, no, you had your chance, you're gone. I'm not like that unless the person is really so far gone that I just I can't, but if they come to me and tell me, look, I realized I made a mistake. I would like to have some kind of compassion and support for, being in this kind of, now that I've realized that I made a mistake here, then sure, I am more likely to give that kind of compassion and support than what I feel like a lot of my other more liberal friends have decided post-election.
And it's not, even then, you run the risk of ostracizing yourself against your own community of the people who accept you. And we all share the same ideals and values, but because you are willing to be more compassionate, at least on some level, now you run the risk of your community.
I think the difference is, for me, is that because I've been in an abusive situation, I understand what it's like to be sucked in by a manipulator and how hard it is to get out of that situation. And that is the reason that I have more compassion for it. It's it's not their fault that they believed his lies. They had their own problems that they were dealing with, and they just wanted to believe that this person was going to help them. And if it's one of those people that are like, I just want to, screw the libs, then I'm probably going to have less compassion for that. But if it's somebody who genuinely, thought that he was going to make things better for them.
There's a lot of tribalism that comes into play, right? They're the issue around Trump isn't a cut and dry issue. It's not black and white. It is so fucking nuanced and shaded in so many different colors that it's you can't put your finger on any one thing and say, well, this is the reason. You can't. And because tribalism plays such a huge part in his popularity, and same thing
he's
with the
intentionally
Democrats. Same thing with the
divided
Democrats.
people, like he puts all these scapegoats up, and it's like, hate this group of people, hate this group of people. He's the one causing the division, I feel like.
Well, he takes no accountability. And I mean, you might be a person who believes that he has nothing to be accountable for. And if that's true, I don't know what to say. Like there's no case to be made if you're not willing to accept that people are fallible.
Right.
That everyone is fallible. And that's the thing, everyone is fallible. And he has never and will never own up to a mistake. Let me retract that statement. The only mistake that I am aware that he has ever apologized for was the I'm just going to come out and say it, the pussy
Did he
grabbing
apologize
video.
for that?
Under duress. It was, at least from my perspective, it was under duress because he hadn't won the 2016 election yet.
Okay.
He was still campaigning for it. And I believe his campaign team told him, look, there's this really damning video of you doing this thing. It would probably be beneficial for you to make some kind of an apology statement. And the only part of the video that I remember from him saying something along the lines of, it was locker room talk. I'm sorry if you guys had taken that out of context. I didn't mean for it to come out I didn't mean for it to sound the way that it sounded. Basically, that was it, right? And then we have this whole discussion about locker room talk, and if anyone remembers that was a whole
vaguely.
But it all, for me, I think it comes down to, I don't think that he is a trustworthy person. I believe, not only do I believe he's dangerous, but I believe that he is, it's not even a belief. Like, it's happening. He said it would happen, and now it's happening. And that is the dismantling of the Constitution. That is dismantling of all the different departments. And look, I 100% concede there are people who have jobs in the government who have no business having those jobs, or those jobs not even existing, right? There's way too much oversight. There's way too much this. There's a lot of fat that can be trimmed. The way he's going about trimming the fat is ill-informed.
Dangerous.
It is erratic, and it's dangerous. And the people that are in charge of eliminating some of these positions, and the people who are in charge of picking up the baton in whatever positions they're being promoted to, are Trump loyalists. I don't think that it's so much that, well, yes, I definitely believe that Trump is dangerous. I think it is the rhetoric that is behind his movement. It is the belief in the cause. It is the representation of the people who don't get attention anymore, that are sticking up for him and want him to succeed, because if he succeeds, they have told themselves that they succeed as well. So you now have people who don't know what the fuck they're doing. RFK is a wonderful example. He is now in charge of the Department of Health, right? He doesn't know how whether he knows or whether he is blowing smoke up Trump's ass. He doesn't know what vaccines do. He doesn't know how they work. And now he's on a mission to outlaw every vaccine that has ever been vaccinated.
Terrified.
Which is, hey, look, if you don't want to take a vaccine, I highly disagree with you, and I'm going to do what I can to try and change your mind because your health affects my health. But also, if that is a choice that you're going to make, objectively, not subjectively, but objectively, that's fine. But don't you fucking dare take my right to health away from me and my family and my friends. And that is one of a billion examples in the Trump administration. Before the 2024 election, the Project 2025 was released, and he said, or whether it was released or leaked or something like that, Trump endorsed it. And then very quickly he turned around and said, I've never heard of this before. I have no idea what this is. And we're like, you literally just endorsed it. And now you've never heard of it before. And then once he sat down to read it, he said, "Oh yeah, that's not what we're doing. This was produced by," and I can't remember the name of the company.
The Heritage Foundation.
The Heritage, it was the Heritage Foundation that wrote this thing. We had nothing to do with it. We're not implementing Project 2025. Instead, we are going to implement. They called it something very different. It was the same exact plan, but they called it by a different name. But it was the exact same thing. And they're like, "Oh no, Project 2025. That's not good for anyone." But this, and I wish I could remember the name of it. But this is what's going to save everything. But nobody paid attention to this. So guess what happened? Trump went back to endorsing Project 2025 after he acknowledged it and then renounced or acknowledged it. Sorry, I'm getting confused. He endorsed it and then pretended that it never existed. And then he said it was terrible. And then he endorsed it again. And these are all verifiable things. Go look them up. It's all out there. And so that, like I said, this is one of a billion different examples that proves to me that Trump is not trustworthy. He's not here to provide the American people with safety and security in a better life. He is here to make himself emperor. And I think if you can't see that, then, I mean, my pity isn't going to do anything for anyone. But I pity you because for whatever reason, you're so blind to that. And I credit where credit is due. Trump is a magnificent magician. He is so much better at magic than Penn and Teller. And what I mean by that is he could teach a master class at flipping the bird and telling racist jokes. And while we're all screaming and crying, "How dare you!" we're all focused on the racist jokes. What we're not focused on is what he's doing behind the scenes. And we're just spinning our wheels saying, "You're not allowed to say that. How dare you?" And there are more dangerous things that he's doing behind the scenes. Like, he got us all riled up about a few years ago. There was a group of people from, and forgive me, Venezuela, who were seeking refuge. Or was it Peru? Somewhere in South America. There was a group of people who had like thousands and thousands of people who migrated on foot from South America all the way up to Mexico, and they were looking for asylum in the United States. But Trump called this group of people who were walking in migration um, um, murderers, rapists, drug dealers, blah blah blah, all this stuff, and they were just seeking asylum from whatever their circumstances were. Um, uh, he causes panic, gets us all to believe it. We're focused on it while he's doing something more dangerous behind the scenes. And those more dangerous things, I mean, look what's happening with Russia. There's so much. There's so much, and it is so upsetting to me. The head of the FBI, the fucking head of the FBI is, I mean, granted, yeah, he's a Trump loyalist. And again, inherently, full disclosure, objectively, it pains me to say this, but it's true. There's nothing wrong with being a Trump loyalist. That in and of itself is not a wrong thing. But it's blindly following the leader without question, without understanding of what the implications are, without wanting to know what the end game is, or what are the cards that this person has up their sleeves. What are they really trying to do? You're just blindly following because you are a part of the tribal mentality.
What's interesting to me is how they start out as loyalists, right? But they don't see themselves as potentially being on the chopping block in Trump's future, because how many people has he promoted and then discarded because they chose to defy him in some way? Like, honestly.
And of all the people he discarded, they've all turned on him. All turned on him.
Another comment I was going to make about, I mean, Timmy's left now, but we're on this topic. So if anyone's watching this after the fact and wants to know our opinions, but I don't think that they're all blindly following him. I have been seeing articles about how at least some of the Republicans in Congress are voting in support of Trump's things because they are genuinely terrified for the lives of their family members.
Transition of power, politics. They're trying to preserve themselves.
But if they're scared about Trump's supporters coming and attacking their families and maybe killing them, right? I mean, that's the self-preservation and family preservation stuff.
Was it Nancy Pelosi's husband? Is that who? Yeah, somebody just showed up on their doorstep with
a hammer or something, right? Just beat him.
Oh yeah, and tried to bash his brains in. Not for anything he's done, but because he's married to Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah. So I don't think it's fair I don't think it's a good idea to support someone who is in power due to intimidation tactics like that. That is terrifying. Can you imagine if a Democrat had come in and was intimidating people in that way? Do you really think that any would be okay with that? Yeah.
Now, here's the other side of the coin. And again, if I'm trying to be fair, which I am, Kamala Harris isn't without her skeletons in the closet. Everybody has their skeletons in the closet. Is Kamala Harris a perfect politician? No. By the very definition, she plays the game that she needs to play to get what she needs to get. I think that campaigning for the presidency takes a certain type of ego to do that. We all love Barack Obama. Well, not we all love, but You know, left, if you're left or moderate, doesn't matter if you're left moderate or right moderate. If you're moderate or left, you love Obama. Obama did some really great stuff, right? But even he himself and his family, they have skeletons. They're not perfect people. He wasn't a perfect president. He made some
Oh,
really bad
I'm not
calls.
happy about his drone missions.
Yeah. There's plenty of stuff that, plenty of policies. And I understand, like, a lot of the stuff that we're all like pointing fingers at Trump and saying, how dare you do this? Obama did it first, and nobody's blaming Obama for it. So it's really hard to be objective. It really is, because a lot of it comes down to tribalism, and a lot of it comes down to your team winning. And it's unfair, and it's unfortunate, and it's upsetting when you can see the writing on the wall, but you can't. Not only can you not do anything about it, but there are people who are actively promoting it. And look, I've got hordes of friends on social media who are 100%, friends of Trump, FOTs. I'm coming up with this term. They're FOTs. They're friends of Trump. They love, and I don't mean literal friends of Trump. I just mean like they love him. They'll post that meme of Kermit the Frog sipping tea, saying, "Yeah, I voted for this, and I'm excited for what's coming next." And like, what a selfish attitude to have. And a lot of these people are self-proclaimed Christians, and I'm not trying to badmouth Christians, but there's this, because I guess technically I'm Christian. There's this dissonance that exists where you're professing through your religion the acceptance of all, and this is what would Jesus do, and all that stuff, and take care, love thy neighbor, and all that stuff. But then you're making active choices to say, oh, well, I fought to have what I have, so why can't somebody else fight to have what they need as well? You want to come into this country, you do it legally. And I don't think anyone is really objecting to that. It sounds like the left is objecting to that, but I don't think anyone actually is really objecting to that. But there's a false equivalency. There's so much hate speech. There are so many lies being thrown around about migrant workers, or people who are in the country illegally. Is it legal? No. Is it a problem? I also don't believe it's a huge problem. Now, granted, I don't have all the statistics. I hear rhetoric that comes through my own filtered channels, but I don't see it as being a big problem. We're trying to blame the war on drugs with all of, whatever illegal is in the country. Ooh. I don't think that's, to do my best Inigo Montoya. I don't think that means what you think it means.
Well, the thing is that the undocumented workers who are working, they're working in jobs that Americans don't want to do anyway. Like, if there so many of them
jobs?
are working on farms and really poorly paid roles, and things that Americans would never want to work for what they're paid in those roles.
I've said this for the better part of 10 years, ever since Stephen Colbert trolled the U.S. Congress and delivered a speech as his character, Stephen Colbert. And he said, I've picked oranges. I've been to an orange grove, and that's hard work. as a celebrity, I don't want to do that. That's hard. That's like really hard, you guys. And it was really funny. You can look it up on YouTube. But he makes a great point. You want to keep orange juice at $3.50 a carton? That comes at a cost. And that cost is cheap labor. And if you are a blood American, you're not going to pick oranges for cheap. You're just not. And it sucks. And it sucks that this is the world that we live in, where we're drawing the line at eggs and orange juice over quality of life. Well, this is ours. You can't play in my sandbox. You need to get a permission slip to play in our sandbox. And even then, we're still going to try and kick you out.
Yeah. And, the fact that people who are here legally are getting caught up in the, detention and deportation is so unfair. So it just seems like there's so many mistakes and things with all of that. But yeah, I care more about people in general, and just because okay, see, here's another thing that I feel like I actually do feel like I'm a genuinely selfish person. And some of my reasons for supporting things is not always because I, care a lot about, everyone in the world. Sometimes it's for selfish reasons. And that means that I can help find those selfish reasons for people that think it's, not they don't want to support a certain thing. So a good example that I like to use is, a lot of people hate the fact that there are homeless people in, cities, and that they're, making the streets messy and like all of this kind of thing. And great, you think that people need to, build themselves up and fix this stuff for themselves. Or, you don't want your taxes to pay for accommodation for the homeless. But if you want to think of it from a selfish standpoint, you can be like, okay, my taxes are going to be paying for something to do with the homeless anyway. Would I rather spend less, have my taxes spend less on accommodation for them, or more on cleaning it up, homeless encampments and moving them to other places, and then having to continuously kind of deal with that, or like even just be like, I don't want to, I don't want to see them have taxes pay for them to live somewhere, so you don't have to see them. Like, you can have selfish reasons to support these types of things, right? And I feel like a horrible person for having it from that kind of standpoint, but if that's what it takes to support something,
it's the reality. Yeah. Everyone wants a quick fix. And for these big scale problems, even a lot of not so big scale problems, there is no quick fix. There's no quick fix. Gun violence. How do you solve gun violence? There's no quick fix to it, because it's written into the Constitution that is a right. It is not a privilege. It is a right. How do you solve that?
One of the reasons I support free public education and up and through into university as well is not just because it actually used to be a thing in the past. Like, my parents went to university for free. So it's not just because of that. It's because the lack of education is what has led to this mess that we're in right now. A more educated populace is going to create a more informed populace to make better decisions when they go to the polls and vote. And so the reason that they're trying to defund that kind of stuff is because they do not want to have an educated populace, because those people will then not support their disastrous policies.
So, talk about history. Let's go all the way back to 400 AD. Now, what is so interesting about 400 AD? Does anyone here in the classroom know can you think of a major figurehead from 400 AD? Anyone? Excellent. Emperor Constantine from Rome. Do you know where I'm going with this?
No.
No? Okay. Emperor Constantine was a politician in Rome around 400 AD. He was a sun worshiper. He believed that the Catholic Church was something to be eradicated. Now, Christianity, Catholicism had not been born yet. Christianity was the dying religion, right? It was on its way out. It had not been received as well as the followers had hoped that it would be received, and people didn't like it. But something interesting happened somewhere between 300 AD and 400 AD, which is the Christian movement went underground, and it was not the mainstream, but it had a very strong underground movement, and it was gaining. My cat is eating our shredding paper pile. Whatever. Yes. So the Christian movement went underground, and it started becoming kind of a popular thing, not like mainstream popular, but the same level of popular if you went to like a punk rock show in the 1970s, right? There was a movement, and it was gaining momentum, but it was far from being mainstream. Emperor Constantine comes in, and he sees the potential in Christianity, and he goes, you know what? There's this underground indie religious movement that could be a thing. So he creates the universal church. Does anyone here in the classroom know what another name for universal is? Catholic. The Catholic Church, also known as the Universal Church. So he creates the Universal Church and brings Christianity into the mainstream. Not only does he have, third time of the day, machinations for power and control, but he weaponizes this now popularized religious movement to either become Christian or die. I mean, I love the Eddie Izzard. What is his new name? Susan?
I don't remember.
Susan Izzard?
Susie?
Something like that. Anyway, Susie Izzard. I love their bit about cake or death. And this was quite literally cake or death, cake being religion, or Christian or Catholicism. And if you didn't become Catholic, well, then the Crusades were born and you were dead, right? And it was all in the name of power. So we look at that historical thing, and we see what might be going on in the world today, right? We see what happened. Like, this is a common theme with people who rise to power and crave that power. And it is so painfully obvious to see that Trump is a power lover. He's a lover of power. I mean, how many times has he thrown Melania and his family under the bus for the sake of control? And they still ride with him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, we can keep talking about this for years and years and years, and it's not going to change a damn thing because everyone has made their minds up. So all of this is to say that this is why
Talk
I
about
don't
just sort of thing.
like
Wow.
politics. Because the passion that I feel with all of this stuff, somebody else on the other side of the aisle feels the exact same way, the exact opposite way, with the same amount of passion as I do. And we're not going to get anywhere. So I have chosen to abstain from politic discussions, and instead try to make people laugh.
Yeah, this is why we do the, well, not the laugh, but the just vulnerable conversations. But I look for more the human elements of, you know, when we can get onto the same page about the human side of things, that's where you're going to find more connection anyway, right? Whether if you're, anyway, that's how I kind of have been trying to take the approach. Timmy has left, but I'm going to bring up he did have a comment here. So he said he just wishes that we could have peace. We don't need to be fighting anymore. We can disagree that that's what the First Amendment is for. But there is no need for violence. Who's being violent? The Trump supporters are the ones that are being violent. I don't think anyone on the other side is being violent. And if they are, I don't agree with that either. So
I mean, yes, I agree with that. There's no need for violence, but I also think that there's so many lies being told. Like no one that I know of is performing acts of violence in open opposition to the Trump administration. But people are talking about it because gay marriage is something that looks like it's going to be on the chopping block pretty soon.
trans people are
trans
going to, yeah, I think there's a law that was been introduced, or a bill introduced into Texas about making trans people illegal, basically.
The DEI stuff has all been revoked. Doge is all up in the air. It's all of these programs that were put in place to help people be the best versions of themselves and to give people equal opportunities. And those equal opportunities are now being taken away, scrutinized, and vilified and weaponized. And I think I can speak for all people around the world, maybe not all, but 99.9% of people on this big blue marble. We just want to be left alone to live the lives that we want to live, as long as they don't infringe on anyone else's, like, as long as you're not hurting anyone, as long as you're not taking anything away from anyone.
And we want to feel
And that,
safe.
like,
I think everyone wants to feel safe.
and we want to feel safe. Everyone wants to feel safe. But for some reason, and I can't exactly articulate it or put my finger on it, but there are a lot of anti-LGBTQIA plus people who feel unsafe around LGBTQIA plus people. What? Well, guess what? The LGBTQIA plus community feels unsafe around you because they can't they feel, and historically so, don't feel like they can be who they are safely. They can't express themselves in the same way that heteronormative people can. Also, heteronormative?
That's a word.
That implies that being hetero is normal? How about hetero average?
Hetero majority?
Because on average, there are more heterosexuals than there are other identifying, right? There just are. That's a number, right? But that doesn't mean that it's normal. Normal is changing.
Well,
And
normal
that
is
change,
a spectrum, you know, because
yes,
and I think about it in terms of a lot of people think that autistic people, for example, that's not normal, but it is because it's a natural part of what exists in the world, right? So anything that naturally exists in the world technically is normal.
Is normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and look, I get it. If I don't know. I'm kind of done talking about this.
Timmy did say thanks for answering his question.
Sorry, we didn't blow smoke up
no,
your
I don't
ass,
think
Timmy.
he was looking for that, but he went to bed. Maybe.
Speaking of which, I should probably do the same.
My dad has a couple of comments, and then we can wrap up. Anyway.
Hey,
he left
Frank.
a couple of comments and then disappeared. So he said, look at the bigger picture. Evidence is showing those that who have been doing those jobs now. So I guess the undocumented immigrant jobs, the farming and stuff. Those who've been doing those jobs now are moving towards the middle class. And maybe he was talking about other stuff. I don't know. I don't remember when he posted this. Are moving towards the middle class. Voted MAGA because it lowers wages in the other jobs too. So yeah, some people, once they're ahead, they don't want other people to get more ahead. This is why, like, I feel like with the tertiary education used to be free, and then once all those people got their education, then they voted for it to not be free for the people that came afterwards. And then he says, jobs that were once normal wage keep getting moved downward as rich employers manipulate the system. So then he said, got to leave company again. Yep, exactly. All right. Well, I'm happy to wrap up where we are. That was way more politically intense than we've ever gotten on this stream. But, that's what happens if the question is asked. We will answer it.
Well, also, here's the thing about talking politics is that it draws lines in the sand. And as a comedian, that's the last thing I want to do. Now, there are plenty of comedians who love drawing those lines in the sand, and that's fine. Good for them. They're giving a voice to a certain population. I don't enjoy doing that because by drawing a line in the sand, that means that you've picked a side, or rather that you want one side to like you. I want everyone to like me. And that includes Trump voters. I want everyone to laugh and to come together and sit side by side and not give a hoot about who they're sitting next to. And now we can have a shared experience. And based off of those positive shared experiences, hopefully that is what's going to help people find commonality and understanding.
Yeah.
I
feel like it was easier in the past compared to what it is now in terms of being able to sit side by side.
Well, there's more at stake now.
Yeah, I think I was gonna go somewhere with stuff, but I can't remember where I was gonna go. So yeah, well, I guess we'll leave it there. And oh no, one's DC and one's Marvel. They're different sides, Mike. How is that allowed?
And one's NBC.
Oh no! Yeah, I do try to do my best to understand everyone's perspectives, because when you can understand what is at the heart of what people are voting for, or what are their goals in a situation, then it's easier to find that common ground and find somewhere in the middle to see each other's perspectives. But when it's too in that tribalistic mindset, that the way that you were describing it, then it just becomes impossible to find that commonality, yeah. All right, so I guess we'll wrap up. We do know when our next episode is, since we scheduled it in advance this time. Last time when we still had Sharon, we scheduled the next one that he was able to join us for as well, which will be exactly a week from now, next Thursday, same start time, 7:30 Pacific, 10:30 Eastern. If you are in the Malaysian time zone, well, guess what? Daylight savings is changing for us in the US this weekend, which means, yeah.
Wait, is it?
Mhm.
It's this weekend?
This weekend, daylight savings changes. Thank you for
Losing an hour.
stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, so if you're in Malaysia, like some of my guests are, then it'll be Friday at 10:30 a.m., whereas in the past it was like 11:30 start time. So there we go. I will put up the next event fairly soon, so that it's up there and you can hit the notification bell to get notified when we go live. And yeah, follow on social media stuff at Dominica Creates is the name that I use pretty much everywhere. Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all of that. And hopefully we'll see you at the next one. Please drop some comments in the YouTube comment section. Drop us some questions to ask in the next stream, and we will happily answer them for you.